What is going on, guys? This is Crowsin, and welcome back to another Baldur's Gate 3 companion build. This time we are finally on the final companion that I haven't done on this channel, and that is Minsc, in a build that I call the Raging Whirlwind Regenerator. It's basically a build that doesn't get most of its benefits until Act 3, which is perfect because you don't get Minsc until you're about level 11 or level 12, and so that is why I went mostly with a Hunter Ranger. So this is a two-hand melee based build that has a lot of good things going for it. I mean, you can really get some crazy AoE damage, you can add poisons and coatings to this build, and you could even do a lot of healing with this build because we're going to go with a lot of items that give us very good synergy every time we hit with our two-handed weapon. And it just makes for a very fun build, and I think this one's a little unique, especially for Minsc, and I know you guys are going to love this one, so let's take a look at it. So beginning with our starting class and our ability points, we are going to start out as a ranger for the dexterity saving throw proficiency, and by going 11 straight points into a ranger, we're going to unlock Whirlwind at level 11. You also can go for Barbarian if you want to for the Constitution saving throw proficiency. However, we're not going to be focusing too much on concentrating spells with this build, and for that main reason, that's why I avoid Barbarian for the starting class. For the favorite enemy, we're going to go with Bounty Hunter here. This just helps out your Ensnaring Strike. For the Natural Explorer, we're going to get 3 of these as we progress into our Ranger, and the 3 that we want are Cold, Fire, and Poison resistance. These 3 are going to stack with the Rage from Barbarian, which means that we're going to get resistances all across the board, which means that Minsc is going to be pretty tanky with this build. So pick any of these 3. For our ability points, we're going to go with 16 strength for our melee damage, 16 dexterity for our armor class and initiative bonus, 14 constitution, 12 wisdom, and then I just lower intelligence and charisma down to 8. For the skill proficiencies, we're going to go with athletics, stealth, and perception. So now we could go through our level path all the way up to level 12, and the level path is very simple with this build, but we still have to pick up a couple of select spells and features as we start progressing into our ranger. So at level 2 we do get 2 different spells. Remember that we are going to be raging with this build, so we're not going to be able to use any of these spells. So you do want to use Longstrider, as you can use this outside of combat, and then the other one here would be Hunter's Mark, as this will give you a little bit of additional damage when you hit with your weapon attack. You do want to be careful and selective when you do use Hunter's Mark though, since we will be having Great Weapon Master, and you still want to get that bonus action extra attack every time you kill or get a crit on an enemy. So for our fighting style, we're not really going to use any of these fighting styles. You know, we're not going to be dual wielding or only using one-handed weapon or something like that. So the best thing to do here is just get defense. That way we get a +1 bonus to our armor class. At level 3 we unlock our subclass, so we're obviously going to choose Hunter here, and for the Hunter's Prey, the best one to choose overall is going to be Colossus Slayer in most cases, especially once we already have Whirlwind, so just go ahead and select that. For our spells, at this point we're not really going to use too many of these other spells. You can go for Speak with Animals or Ensnaring Strike since we did get Bounty Hunter at level 1. At level 4 we get our first feat, and for this feat all we want to do is just go ahead and select Ability Improvement and raise up our strength to 18. At level 5 we get access to our extra attack, and then we also get an additional spell, and we unlock level 2 spells. The good spell to get here would be Spike Growth for those fights where you will not be using Rage. So now that we're level 6, we do unlock a new favorite enemy and Natural Explorer. None of these favorite enemies are going to be useful for us, especially Ranger Knight, since we can't use Rage with heavy armor. So at this point, I just go with Keeper of the Veil here, and then for the Natural Explorer, if you did pick up Wasteland Wanderer Fire, now's your chance to pick up Cold or Poison. Level 7 unlocks a new spell and defensive tactic. For this spell, I just go with Speak with Animals, since Minsc is always speaking with Boo, so it just kind of fits the theme. And then for the defensive tactic, one of these is going to stand out more than the rest, and that will be Multi-Attack Defense. Multi-Attack Defense will inflict a -4 penalty to attack rolls on enemies that attack you, and the good thing about this is that it also activates Reverberation when you use Boots of Stormy Clamor. So it's a very good additional feature that you can add to this build that will also inflict Reverberation every time an enemy attacks you. At level 8 we get our second feat, and as with most two-handed melee characters, the best thing to do here would go ahead and pick up Great Weapon Master. Not only is this going to give you an extra bonus attack if you do manage to crit or kill an enemy, but you're also going to deal more damage. Level 9 unlocks a new spell as well as level 3 spells, and the best spell to select here will be Plant Growth, as Plant Growth does not require concentration. At level 10 we unlock a new favorite enemy and Natural Explorer, so for the favorite enemy I just choose Sanctified Stalker here, and then for the Natural Explorer, now's your chance to go ahead and select the Wasteland Wanderer Cold if you have selected Fire and Poison already. So now that we're level 11, we unlock our two best actions that a hunter can get, and those are Volley and Whirlwind. We are going to stick to Whirlwind since we are a melee build, and the amazing thing about Whirlwind is that we're going to be able to stack all of these HP regen items, and every time we use an AoE, it's going to give us 6 HP per every enemy that we hit with this. So it's just really going to add some amazing synergy with this build. And then for our additional spell, at this point we don't really need any of these spells. I just go for utility, so I just go for Enhanced Sleep here if you want to use this before you go into combat. And finally, now that we hit level 12, all we want to do here is just multi-class into a Barbarian. Barbarian will give us Rage, which is very thematic for Minsc, but also it's going to give us extra damage, and more importantly, it's going to give us physical damage resistance. So between Ranger and Barbarian, we're going to get so many good resistances with this build that you're going to be pretty tanky against a lot of different damage types that enemies are going to throw at you. So I really love adding Barbarian to this build. Yeah, it's not going to be the best multi-class that you can do out there with a 1-level dip, but it's going to fit the theme for Minsc. So now that we've finished our leveling path, we can go through gearing up Minsc, and for the equipment, I mainly just tried to stack as many HP regen items as I could. So you know, things like the Sword of Chaos, mixed in with Ring of Regeneration, the Periapt of Wound Closure, as well as Helm of Baldur. All of these things are going to stack. It's going to give you so much healing per turn, and the more enemies that you have, the more AoE you can do, which in turn means the more HP regen this build is capable of. From there, I just went with Boots of Stormy Clamor. That way we can inflict reverberation with a whole bunch of different hunter features that we have, and that also stacks with the Thunderskin Cloak. A good alternative to the Thunderskin Cloak will be Cloak of Displacement, as this will also give enemies disadvantage on attack rolls that target you. I really wanted to make the Derivation Cloak work with this build, but this thing will actually not work with Sword of Chaos. I tried to add weapon coatings that will actually inflict poison, but that's a different type of poison. It's not poison damage, you're just inflicting an enemy with poison, so unfortunately the Derivation Cloak will not work with this build. For the armor, we're going to go with Armor of Agility, as this will add your full dexterity modifier, so it's going to give you some nice armor class with just 16 dexterity. If you want a good alternative, that will be Flame Enameled Armor, as this will give you a +2 bonus to initiative rolls. For the gloves, we're going to go with Hell Dust Gloves, as this is going to add additional weapon attack damage with fire, and that's just going to add up with all of your AoE attacks that you're going to get with Whirlwind. So Hell Dust Gloves, yeah, they're very contested, but they work out very well, especially on a build like this that can just attack a whole bunch of different types of enemies. So other than using the Ring of Regeneration, we're also going to need to add Risky Ring to this build. It's just going to give you advantage on all of our attacks, and we really do need this because we only have 18 strength, and we still want to be able to use Elixir of Bloodlust, and we have Great Weapon Master, and that's really going to limit our attack rolls. So we really do need to have Risky Ring, and yes, I know it is a very contested ring. There's a lot of good builds that require Risky Ring, so if you do have another build that needs Risky Ring, then what you can do here is use Gloves of the Automaton, and that way you're going to have to swap out the Hell Dust Gloves, and you're going to have a little bit less damage, but you're also going to be able to have an advantage that way. And the best weapon to keep our HP regen theme here is going to be Sword of Chaos, and this is actually going to give you 6 HP every time you hit an enemy, thanks to the Periapt of Wound Closure, so you definitely want to combine this amulet with Sword of Chaos. And then for the ranged weapon, I just go with the Deadshot Bow. This is mainly for the critical hit effect. This is actually going to combine very well with this build since we do have advantage. So we're going to get critical hits a lot easier, which means that the damage is really going to spike up. And that is really what we want with this build, and that is how we gear Minsc. So now we could do a combat showcase featuring Minsc, and I do have haste as well as Elixir of Bloodlust active, and then I also used Crawler Mucus prior to this fight. That way I coated my weapon with poison, and if these enemies fail a Constitution saving throw, then they will become paralyzed, which means that you can get free criticals and a 100% hit chance. So it's very good, and the good thing about this is that Reverberation will actually lower their chances of succeeding a Constitution saving throw, so you get some good synergy there. So what you want to do with a build like this, because basically hunters are like the king of AoEs, is you want to try to group enemies up with certain abilities or items. And in this case, if you did manage to save up a bunch of Void Bulbs in Act 1, you should have some in Act 3, otherwise you will need the Black Hole ability that you can get from an Illithid power. So in this case, I'm just going to use a Void Bulb, and I'm just going to use it on my main character. That way I can keep an action for Minsc here. So I'm just going to use a Void Bulb kind of like right in the center here and just try to group these enemies up. That way I could get a nice AoE attack with Minsc. And we did manage to group up roughly 4 of them. I think I should be able to get a Whirlwind attack here with these 4 enemies. So we could just go back into Minsc and just go around here. Yeah, that will provoke an opportunity attack, but I don't mind it just to showcase this. So we'll go ahead, get over here right in the center, and generally I like to rage with my bonus action on the first turn, especially if you are fighting higher HP enemies or bosses, because rage is going to give you physical damage resistance, which is going to be very helpful against those bosses that hit like a truck. So we'll just go ahead and rage here. And now we can use our Whirlwind attack. So I don't think I can get this enemy over here. I might as well just try to move. Yes, it's going to provoke an opportunity attack, and yeah, you don't want to do this generally, but just for the sake of this video, I'm going to do this. So here we go. Now we can get 5 different enemies here, which means that we can do so much damage and get so much healing at the same time. So let's start the process. So this is basically how we use this build, just going to use Whirlwind a whole bunch. And as you can see, some of these enemies did get paralyzed, especially this archer right here. You can see the little green fog, which means that it is a 100% hit chance as well as a free critical. And yeah, we're just going to keep going. Another Whirlwind right here. And yeah, that is basically just how you could just clean these enemies up. As long as you're able to group enemies, this is where this build really shines. And so now what we can do is we can also throw Boo if we really wanted to. So throwing Boo does have an advantage, and that is that Boo can blind enemies. The problem is there's just so much wasted potential with throwing Boo because it's not a 100% chance to blind that enemy. They actually have to fail a saving throw, which is generally pretty easy. I think it's just a base 15 difficulty class. So throwing Boo doesn't really have too many advantages unless you really just wanted to blind an enemy or you were just playing around with this. So in this case, blinding enemies can give you somewhat of an advantage for your other party members, assuming that they fail the saving throw. So in this case, I'm just going to throw Boo at this enemy here, and hopefully he gets blinded. And as you see, he succeeded the saving throw. So unfortunately, he did not get blinded, and that's one of the reasons why I would recommend not to throw Boo. Even though it's fun, it's just not very practical. So at this point, I don't think I could get over to this enemy, so I'm basically stuck until the next round, but that's okay. I might be able to throw this. Here we go. That'll work. At least we were able to get bleed as well as reverberation on this enemy by doing that, because we just couldn't get to him. So now we're in turn 2 and we can basically just wrap this fight up. I also want to mention that you can use oil of combustion with this build. Yes, it will deal fire damage to you, but remember, we do have fire resistance. And the way most people use this is with ranged hunters. That way they can just stay back from afar and they can use volley, and that way they can get oil of combustion to light up all the enemies. But it's also very effective with this build in melee range because we can really counter any kind of fire damage that comes our way, thanks to all of the healing that we will get per every attack. So this is going to be very good, especially if you also have a whole bunch of enemies grouped up. So just for the sake of this video, I'm just going to coat my weapon with oil of combustion, and we could just see if we can counter that fire damage. So let's just go over here, attack this enemy, attack them again, and there you go. We are still pretty high on health, didn't really get affected too much there. And let's go ahead over here and do the same thing. Of course, I would miss. So let's try again. Let's get another attack. And one more. And as you can see, we are still at full health. So it's very easy to counter any kind of fire damage that comes our way with oil of combustion. And we can still get some very good explosive damage. So I hope you guys enjoyed my Minsc Raging Whirlwind Regenerator build, and I feel like this is a very unique and thematic build for Minsc. Not too many people like to use melee hunters simply because volley is better in just about every way. And yeah, I just feel like this build really suits Minsc, especially with all of the HP regen going on here. So there's so many cool things you could do with this build, and I hope you guys really enjoyed this one. Let me know what you think about it in the comments, and I will see you in the next video.